QuaranJazz. Listen while you're home. Hello and welcome to the 33rd episode of QuaranJazz. I'm Geisa Fernandes, singer, songwriter, and music researcher from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And your favorite podcast is starting now. Before I introduce you to this week's guest, let me please remind you that in the description of this episode you will find several ways to contact me in case you want to share your stories here in the show, make suggestions, critiques, or talk about jazz. They include a link to my webpage, geisafernandes.com. Also, a directly link to my mailing list, in case you want to subscribe and get free regular content, and also find out more about my work and other podcasts that I produce. Or maybe you would rather prefer to join the Touring Jazz Musician, a group that I've created on Facebook. The group was named after a guide that I wrote to keep musicians informed about jazz festivals that accept submissions directly from artists, the so-called open submission process. If this is your thing, join us there on Facebook, the Touring Jazz Musician. And QuaranJazz has also its own playlist on Spotify with the songs featured in all the episodes, plus some little surprises. Let's check what is new on our QuaranJazz playlist on Spotify. There you go. No talk, all jazz. beautiful tune you just heard is called Iseu, from trumpeter and composer Teus Nobel, who has recently been nominated for the Edison Award, the Dutch Grammy, by the way, with an album called Saudade. You know, this word that we Portuguese speakers are so proud of because we say you simply cannot translate it into another language. Anyway, the guy is a Tom Jobim fan. I shall say no more. Hi, Teus. Thank you so much for your participation in QuaranJazz. I know that you are a busy guy at the moment. Very glad that you could find some time to talk to us. I always ask my guests to start by telling their stories. How did they start out with their instrument, your influences, and how would you describe your music?
Hello Jason, hello dear listeners of the QuaranJazz podcast. My name is Teus Nobel. I'm a trumpeter based and born in the Netherlands, in Holland. The trumpet which I picked up at the age of 9. Well, actually I wanted to pick up the trombone, which was the instrument my dad was playing, but I was too small to handle the trombone. I couldn't reach the lower positions, so they said, "Young man, you should start on the trumpet. And then later maybe you can switch to the trombone." So, to be honest, a little disappointed, but okay, here I was starting on the trumpet, and actually I never let go since. Because the trumpet, I think it gave me a way out. I was a small boy, a really shy boy, being bullied on the school ground a bit because I was so tiny, and then suddenly with the trumpet I had a voice, a way to be heard. You know, I would take the trumpet to school and then play for my fellow students, and they were impressed, and suddenly I was somebody. You know, it gave me some kind of identity. But still, for years I didn't think of being like a professional musician. My dad was in finance, and of course I wanted to do everything what my dad did. So I thought, okay, it's probably gonna be something like that, and then play the trumpet as a hobby. But then, as soon as I was able, I started playing at an amateur orchestra in my village, Crescendo, what it was called, and I was sat down next to an older trumpet player, and he gave me some cassette tapes of trumpet players that played really high and really fast notes, and it was like super impressive. Wow, man, this is something I want to be able to do. And then gradually he started giving me cassette tapes of jazz players too, like Chet Baker and Rick Kiefer and Wynton Marsalis. And I thought, wow, these guys are able to tell their story via their instrument. This is something I want to do. So then the idea of maybe trying to work through being at the level of applying for a conservatory like that, or a music high school, started to appear, and I did so at the age of 17, but I didn't really know about jazz yet. So they refused me at the jazz department, but I could play the trumpet pretty well, and they accepted me at the classical department. So then I started with 2 years of classical music, building up my technique and playing together with other musicians there in the orchestral projects. And in the meanwhile, listening to a lot of jazz CDs and taking some lessons with my later teacher, Jarmo Hogendijk. So after 2 years, I made the transition to jazz music. And then I thought, okay, but this is where I'm gonna find my voice. This is where I can be free. So I graduated in 2006 when I was 23. And then the first 6 or until 8 years, I mostly did commercial work, like theater and musical productions like Fame and Footloose and Saturday Night Fever, trying to make some musical kilometers in being a professional musician, and in the meanwhile trying to figure out what it was I wanted to tell musically myself. And I was doing some jazz bands and touring some with a instrumental ska band, touring through Europe and finding my voice in that way, but I didn't really have the confidence yet to start releasing other albums of my own or composing my own music, you know. That started when I won an audition for the solo trumpeter at the Dutch Royal Air Force Orchestra. They were looking for a trumpet soloist who could play a jazz solo. And there I started developing more and I started in 2010 there, and 2012 I thought, okay, now it's time for my first jazz album under my own name, which was called Flow. And soon albums started to come out, and compositions started to come out, and it really started to flow. So I played with that Air Force Orchestra for 9 years, and in the meanwhile touring with my own projects. I had the Air Force Orchestra gave me a steady financial base, so I could finance my own albums, didn't have to do anything with the record labels. I could decide anything myself, which was a demanding but really learning curve for me. And last year I thought, okay, now it's enough with the orchestra. I'm really ready to do it completely on my own. So I quit my job, and I've been freelancing ever since. It's hard to really describe my music in one word, because my taste and preferences, they shift every few years. That resulted in my first album, Flow, of 2012 being fusion and groovy music, and my second album, Legacy, of 2014, more jazz in an acoustic quintet. The third one, Social Music, of 2016, I mean, it was completely experimental, with 2 guitars, sort of in the vibe of Miles's Bitches Brew. And then there was Journey of Man in 2019, for which I switched to a quartet setting, acoustic, with a bunch of very free musicians. And then again, 6 months after that, I released an album with a big string section with the music of Tom Jobim. So I guess the stamp or label you could give my music or albums is that it's honest. It's what I want to do, play and record at that moment. But I have the feeling that my taste is starting to settle down now for the coming years. And that's the reason why for the first time ever I will record another album, so 2 albums with the same band. I never did that before. I always switched because I thought, okay, I need to go to a new direction. But this band is just so good, and everyone is playing so free and taking so much risks. So now I also think it's time to do a live album recording, also a first, on December 28th and 30th of this year in Jazz Club Paradox in Holland, for which I will also first start up a crowdfunding at the end of this month. So please keep an eye on my website and support our music.
You know, before QuaranJazz, I had a podcast about how to be indie in Brazil. I'm in one season, actually planning to come back, but this is another story. Anyway, the most successful episode of all is the one dealing with crowdfunding. I think crowdfunding is great for many different reasons, starting with the visibility that you get to the project. So well done. And how was your original plan for the year of 2020? How did the year start for you?
2020 for me started with recording a new septet album with a Belgian pianist, Chef Neve. It was a septet with without drums. So it was 2 brass players, 3 tenor saxophones, and then piano and bass. A famous bassist, Jasper Heubu of the band Phronesis. And we recorded an album for 2 weeks straight.
Wow.
And it was really beautiful but complicated and complex music. It took us a while, but then I think we recorded a killer album, and we would be touring big after the release. I think we were already booked for somewhere between 30 and 40 gigs in numerous countries. And other than that, I had just founded a new professional big band, Paradox Jazz Orchestra, with which we had just started doing monthly concerts that sold out quicker than I ever hoped for. And I had numerous concerts with my own quartet still a tour belonging to the Journey of Man album of 2019, and a few with a new project I was setting up with a few Ghanaian musicians I once met on a concert trip in 2017.
This was indeed a busy agenda. How did you cope with the new situation? How did you adapt your frenetic agenda to the lockdown situation?
Well, how I adapted to this corona crisis, 2019 had been so crazy. I released a new quartet album, Journey of Man, in March, And in March, I also became a father of our first child, our son Bix. I decided to quit my steady job as a solo trumpeter of the Air Force Orchestra. I recorded and released a new album with a string section. After becoming father myself, I sadly enough lost my own father at the age of 70, which of course also had a big impact. I started a foundation for my own quintet. I started a foundation for the big band, of which both I became an executive officer. And I was playing around 100 gigs that year, including the gigs with the Air Force Orchestra. So the first months of the lockdown, after coming to realize this was not a matter of weeks, I sort of started to process all that had been happening. And it was around April then, so I thought, well, if everything will be fine, like in September after the summer, then financially it'll be okay. I had this big tour coming up with Chef Neve, and I thought, okay, we will manage. But, well, as you know, we are still in trouble. So without a dot on the horizon of when we will return to normal again. So what I did was settle down for about 3 months, just spending time with my wife and son, and sometimes recording some stuff for other musicians. Then I did some live stream concerts for which people could make donations. And since July, when concerts were made possible again for limited audiences, I've been playing an average of like about 6 concerts a month in various settings, my quartet, my duo with pianist Chef Neve, and some other small settings. So that's basically what I've been doing and how I've been adapting to this current health crisis.
And how are the restrictions now in the Netherlands concerning live performances and meetings and all this sort of things involving getting together with other people?
Our country, the Netherlands, is increasing restrictions at the moment, but so far concerts with a maximum of 30 people in the audience are still allowed until a certain time in the evening. So I still have some concerts lined up for now. And I also started teaching at the Academy for Music and Performing Arts in Tilburg. Unfortunately, that school is also closed in the coming 2 weeks due to infections. And honestly, I'm just working my ass off trying to create the conditions now to be able to have a kickstart when things return to normal. So this includes gathering a lot of content for my soon-to-be launched crowdfunding for the live album, recording a sequel to my Saudade album of last year. That Saudade album has been nominated for an Edison Award, the Dutch equivalent of the Grammys. But I'm also still composing new music for the live album. I'm having meetings with boards of my foundations in order to keep creating sources of income and new concert series. I'm also expanding my network, having coffees with people of my business, talking about the times and the ways to strengthen your position in times like these. Making promotional videos for my projects, practicing new repertoire, and for the rest it's just spending time with my family and just, surviving. It's not easy financially, but so far we do okay. My wife mainly gets her income from teaching yoga and being a choreographer, and we just have to sit it out like everyone else. But again, not while sitting still. I'm not throwing in the towel yet. That off switch was okay for the first few months of this health crisis, like I mentioned before. Taking the time to process all that had been happening in 2019, but now, no, not now. We need to keep getting off our asses and come up with creative solutions to keep being able to tell our musical story, our art form. And it's not a straight line forward or up. It's up and down, because it keeps happening that you put a lot of effort in a new concert date, for example, rehearse, getting everything in order to go full on, and then it gets cancelled. You're disappointed, you're pissed, you're down for a while, and then you pick up yourself again, because music is what for a large part makes you. And in the same time, it's a reality check, Who are you? Are you a musician, or are you a human first? And what about the humans around you? What are they doing? And of course, being a young father, it's like, hey, someone else needs my constant attention too. No, he doesn't only need it, he deserves it. So I guess that's the positive side, or at least lesson, that we could take out of this crisis. What's left of you when something you link a big part of your identity to is taken away from you? And how do you deal with it?
My oh my, you've certainly summed it up in a very, a very colorful way. Could really relate to lots of things that you said, especially the reality check part. Anywho, at the beginning of the episode, we got a teaser from your beautiful tune, Iseo, and I would really like you to tell us a few words about this composition and also about the next track, the one that we're gonna listen at the end of the episode.
The first song you've heard, Iseo, was a song of my album Journey of Man last year with Alexander van Popta on piano, Jeroen Vierdag on double bass and Tuur Moens on drums. And what makes that song special is that it was the first take of the first song of the first day. So, you know, it was so fresh and yet so together, so mature, so adventurous that take had to come on the album. So for me, this was the proof that the band, this band is ready for a live album, which I had never dared before, because you know, live you can't fix anything no more, right? But what you get back is the urgency and the energy of also playing for a live crowd that you just cannot get in a studio. So the origin of the song is a bit binary. It's a musical description of the view I had in 2017 when we were having a summer holiday at the Lake Iseo in Italy. But I actually wrote the tune in Accra, Ghana when I was there for a few concerts. I played a lot with local musicians there, and you can hear some of the influences of their rhythms and drum grooves. The song you will hear in full is the album opener of our Saudade album that is nominated for an Edison Award. The song title, Falando de Amor, means talking about love. And love there was, oh yes. My cooperation with Westview Studios is a long one. I recorded 4 of my 5 albums there now and have been playing on countless recordings of themselves. And I co-produced the album with Roland Jacobs, who is the owner and also technician and arranger at that studio, and his father, legendary Dutch bass player Ruud Jacobs, was also involved in picking out the repertoire. He played with Miles Davis and with Chet Baker, and he played with Louis Armstrong, for crying out loud. So Ruud was really a big inspiration and awesome to have him involved with the project. And Ruud also, I mean, the Westview Studios has a big love for the Brazilian music and for the bossas and for big string sections. I mean, I don't know if you know, the listeners know the Dutch commercial violinist André Rieu. He plays all this Wiener classics, like the Strauss music and stuff. He takes that and takes it out of the concert hall and brings it to a bigger audience. But André Rieu, when he was not well known yet, it was Ruud Jacobs with Westview Studios that produced his first album with the Second Waltz, which gave him great fame. Well, Ruud Jacobs, I think my first cooperation with them was on an album also with strings and with bossas. It was for a charity goal. I think it was for a cancer foundation. Well, I just loved playing in that setting, and they really noticed that the combination with my sound and strings was a golden one. So then we thought, okay, we need to do something with this. We started thinking of repertoire, and we quickly came out with the music of Antonio Carlos Jobim.
Viva Jobim!
The Brazilian master composer, the
Great master.
The Gershwin of Brazilian music. And well, over the course of 3 years we recorded this album, which in the beginning it was like a light-hearted bossa album, and then suddenly, right before finishing this album, both my father, as Roland Jacobs' father, my co-producer, Ruud Jacobs, they died within a period of 2 weeks. So then we thought, okay, wait. It suddenly, the goal and the meaning of this album suddenly becomes so different now. It gets so much deeper, so we need to do something about it. So we went back into the studio, we recorded most parts of the trumpet parts again, and we adjusted some stuff, because the titles alone suddenly became so much more sensitive and so much more deep that we thought, okay, we need to take this to another level to have it even make it have more meaning for us. I mean, for us, it's, a way to cope with loss, which is also, of course, saudade is like the Brazilian word for what blues is for Americans. It's both love and loss and distance and missing someone and melancholy. So I guess this album is for us is just a way to process all that's been happening in the past year. And we're so grateful that also a jury appreciates this album in that way, and that we are now in the run for this Edison Public Choice Award. I guess what I'm trying to say to us, it's already so special that we have been able to make this also with the that we had to do it involved, that it's special as it is now. So I hope the listeners of the QuaranJazz podcast will enjoy this too. This is of Antonio Carlos Jobim, the song Falando de Amor, talking about love. So Jeza, it's been a pleasure to being a guest in your QuaranJazz podcast. I hope the listeners will have liked this episode and they will check out all your other episodes. At least check out the episode with Arlette Hovenga, who is also in the board of my foundation and who is supporting me greatly with my campaign. So I hope that everyone will get out of this crisis on a respectful way, and that they can still, if you're a musician, that you are able to maintain telling your musical story. And I hope to meet you all soon. So bye for now, and stay safe, stay healthy.
All right. Thank you, Teus. Thank you so much for your participation in QuaranJazz. I really appreciated it. Thanks a lot. And this was the 33rd episode of QuaranJazz. I'm Geisa Fernandes, singer, songwriter, and music researcher from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Thank you, dear listener, very much for your company. If you'd like to keep the jazz running, drop me a line. You will find the ways to contact me in the description of this episode. There, you will find a link to my mailing list. Just leave me your name and email address and you will get free regular content. You can also use the form on my webpage, geisafernandes.com, or you can join the group The Touring Jazz Musician on Facebook if you'd like to know more about jazz festivals that accept submissions directly from artists. And last but not least, I would like to remind you that QuaranJazz is a proud participant of the Social Distancing Festival. Check out this amazing action. Well, dear listener, it is time to bid you farewell. Thanks again for staying with us. Till next week. And now, ladies and gents, falando de amor. QuaranJazz. Listen while you're home. QuaranJazz, a podcast by Geisa Fernandes.